I will very quickly introduce our guest speakers who've joined us very kindly. We've got Z Jogi, who some of you have already said hi to. Z's a record-breaking British athlete and mountaineer. I won't go into all the details, but she's even holds two world records, or Guinness World Records, I believe. I'm
You.
sure she will share a bit more about that in her talk. We then got Dr. Rahula Haji, who's a
Ooh.
internationally recognized cardiologist and social activist. And Rahula originally came from Afghanistan, but then moved
Oh.
to Ukraine. And from there, he became a very eminent physician. But anyway, at the outbreak of the war, he and his family had to leave Ukraine, and I'm sure he'll talk a bit about the journey that he's been through. And then we've got next, the other speaker is Dr. Shahzad Amin, who's a consultant psychiatrist who's had over 20 years or more um, working in this particular field. And he'll be sharing some of the case studies that he's had to deal with in his time. We were also going to have a singer participate this evening. Unfortunately, due to health reasons, Emily Maguire, who's an incredible singer and songwriter, isn't able to perform, but we hope a bit later on to play some of her music that she performs. So uh, we are also supporting this event to fundraise for a charity called Young Minds. I don't know if many of you know them, but they help a lot of young people who are suffering from some mental illness condition and providing them with the sort of tools to cope with. I hope, you know, by you taking part today, you'll be able to donate something. And as part of their campaign, it's Hello Yellow. So I don't know if any of you are sporting any yellow colors. I think I have, if you can tell, a yellow jumper. Um, but anyway, we will hopefully talk a bit more about it a bit later on. Just so in terms of housekeeping and a few things, we are going to keep you mute during the course of the talks. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat, and then the end of each speaker, we may open it up to our speakers giving an answer. Um, like everything else, it's all about being positive in this sort of scenario. So we're not going to be engaging in any personal uh, analysis of anyone's health and condition. Um, okay, well, without much ado, settle down, grab a drink, and then allow our first guest speaker, Z Jogi, to take over. Over to you, Z.
Thank you. So, yeah, my name is Jogi. I'm from Blackburn, and I feel privileged to be here today. I met Zainul quite recently, and he introduced me to this service of, the working area in Manchester. So I'm quite excited to start delivering in Manchester as well. But a little bit about me. So I've come from a single parent background, and being younger, I really suffered mental health, but I didn't actually understand what it was. And in the society, back in the sort of 1980s, a lot of talks weren't around at the time about mental health. And I always felt not having a father in my life, or a granddad or a brother or a male figure in my life, that I felt really left out. And I was always thinking, why me? Why is it that I'm feeling this way? And I didn't really understand how to control these emotions. And so the older I got, and especially when I became a teenager, I started to sort of like become a bit rebellious towards life and situations, because I just couldn't understand how to control the emotions. And I remember speaking to a friend of mine, and she said, why don't you attend this Thai boxing gym that was locally here in Blackburn? I went, right, okay, I'll try anything. So I remember going to this gym, and I have to say, stepping foot into that gym as a 14-year-old child, it was overwhelming because of the boxing bags and the pads and men training. And it was like, whoa, this is a new world. But it actually changed my life because it gave me a direction, it gave me discipline, and it also allowed me a space to release sort of negative energy that I was feeling at the time. So it was actually quite powerful stepping foot into that gym, because I became a volunteer. I then started teaching some classes and I became a trainer. And I delivered volunteering sessions in that gym for 14 years. And it was very, very powerful. That training, 2 days a week, I used to train. I used to train fighters. I used to train younger ladies. And it was quite hard within the martial arts industry being a female because it wasn't very well known. And I still remember so many sessions on a Tuesday when I used to attend, it was only me that was turning up. And my coach would be like, what is it? Why is it just you who's turning up? And I was like, well, I'm committed. But that commitment then flourished for me because my coaches noticed how disciplined I was and how seriously I took this martial arts training, that he started to train me to become a coach. So I had the training and I started delivering
Oh,
these
so you can
sessions.
fight.
Yes, I can.
You're a scrapper.
Yes, I can. So that sort of journey started at a very young age, and I started delivering sessions once a week to kids, and then I started doing fighters training. I started doing female only sessions, one-to-one sessions, and it was a great time of my life. And I had these mentors, these male figures in my life who were supporting me, who weren't just my mentors, they were my father figure, they were my best friends, they were like a brother to me, because they're the only men that I had in my life that I could look up to. After that period of time, I started to sort of like learn a little bit more about nature. I've always loved activities and adventures and different sports. So I decided to sort of go out walking, and it was part of my training regime to get more fitter and build more cardio. So I remember going to the first reservoir here locally in Blackburn, and I started running around, did the 5K, and then I started increasing that. But then I managed to find a hill called Pendle Hill. So for those of you that are local to me in Blackburn, you'll know where that Pendle Hill is. And I climbed that Pendle Hill for the first time, and it took me nearly 2 hours to climb this hill. It was tough. It was a very big challenge. And I thought to myself, oh, this is exciting. And the reason why it was exciting for me is because you have to push your body past its boundaries to climb this mountain. But also for me, it was a way to release negative energy. Because being in the Thai boxing world and within the gym environment, that was one way of releasing energy. But then when I'd finished the session, I'd come home, I'd still feel that there's a lot going on mentally. So that's why I decided to then start climbing mountains. So I started Googling and started researching and finding out different mountains and the smaller mountains, and started writing them down and starting to do a to-do list. And in the next sort of 5 years, I realized I had conquered all the mountains in the UK. That's Scafell Pike, Ben Nevis, Snowdon, Yorkshire Three Peaks, 10 Peak Caldale Challenge. So I did all the sort of mountains. Then I thought to myself, right, now I've got all this knowledge in the martial arts industry as well as the mountaineering world. What can I do with this? So I had an idea that I wanted to set up a community project to help other people engage in physical sports and activity. So I decided to speak to my 3 mentors, and bearing in mind, I have been there for 14 years. So I went to them with my black little book with all these ideas, and I spoke to them about this proposition that I want to set up a female-only mixed martial arts academy. Now, unfortunately, they weren't very supportive. They turned around and said to me that, Z, you're just part of the furniture, you're a volunteer, you do the training for the girls' classes and the kids' classes, just stick at what you're doing. Why do you want to do all these other stuff? You know, it's took us 10 years to set up this gym. It's not an easy game. I said, I understand it's not easy, but I want to try to set up something so other people can learn, because I have all this knowledge and I want to share it out on a bigger platform. And unfortunately, I didn't get the advice or the support that I wanted. And I remember coming home and I was absolutely in tears because I just couldn't believe that I dedicated my whole youth into this organization and they weren't supportive with an idea that I had around female empowerment. Now, I don't know if that was a culture thing or whether that was something else. But I remember speaking to my mom and she said to me, Z, you can do it. And I was like, but how, Mom? She said, right, just research and, you'll be able to do this. I said, right. So that's when my research started at the age of 28, where I researched all different organizations, not just locally, but nationally, finding out how to set up a community project, but not just supporting the females, how to set up a martial arts academy. And it was a really big struggle, and that time of my life was quite a lot for me mentally to deal with, because I was working a full-time job in the bank. So I have a banking background. I worked there for 10 years, so I have a very commercial background, and I was working there. I was also training at the same time, so hiking mountains and also doing other things, like swimming and fitness training, strength training in the gym. So I didn't have a lot of time, but I dedicated a couple of hours each evening to research, because research is powerful, because knowledge is key. And I contacted, and I still remember every single organization, that's 41 organizations I contacted to ask for support and help. And you won't even believe, not even one of them helped me, because I don't know, maybe because I was female, maybe because I'm a Muslim, because I'm an Asian girl. I don't know, I was young. I don't know what the reasons were till today. And I still remember just continually getting rejected and rejected. And the consistency and that discipline and that deep sort of emotion that I had to take out from my soul to believe in myself, because I knew I had something big that I could do in the community. Because bearing in mind, I had been volunteering from the age of 14 since I started that gym. I started volunteering and helping out. That's apparent for me. It's part of my religion, and I love to give back to the community. And so after rejection per rejection, that 8 months before starting this organization was a massive struggle. And the only people that helped me was my mom and my sister. They were the only two people that supported this. So anyway, I had the courage. 8 months later, I decided, right, I know what I'm doing. Let's go out and set this up. So I remember delivering my first fitness class. Now, bearing in mind, being a volunteer at the previous gym, I had 40 ladies turning up. So you could imagine how hard and how many years that took, from just me turning up to be a student in a martial arts class to nearly 40 women turning up. And that was a volunteering role. So in my mind, I'm thinking, this is going to be easy, because if I could establish 40 ladies, all them 40 ladies will come to my class. And it was unfortunate, because every time I had a session on, I had a 6-week course on, nobody was turning up. And it was just me. But you know what? I really loved it, because I had a good training session for 2 hours in the gym myself. And I punched those bags, and I lifted those weights, and I absolutely loved it. But it was just that the thing inside really hurt me, because I was like, why is this not working? And it took months and months and months just to get a couple of girls turning up for this session. And I thought to myself, every single day I had the self-doubt. And I'm sure every single one of you in your life, wherever you're feeling, whether it's in fitness or health and well-being, there will be points in your life where you have self-doubt. I had those too. And I still remember till today, I thought, it's not worth it. This is not going to happen. It's not going to work. There's no point. But it was a little thing inside of me and my mom's support that said to me, I need to carry on, because I had this passion and I had this knowledge. But what I also did was I expanded my knowledge in the martial arts world. So I learned more about self-defense, the basic skills and how to defend yourself on the streets, reasonable force, what the law states, physical techniques, the theory. And I became a self-defense coach at the time. I also then started to train in boxing specifically, because I wanted to become a boxing coach, which I then completed too. And straight after that, and this is only the last year, I also became a wrestling coach. But within that time, all that knowledge that I had, I decided, right, now it's time that I throw this out there into the community. And marketing, social media, it was a big, big struggle, but I just kept the persistency and that discipline, because I know how hard it's been to come from a single parent background. And that's the reason why I had to carry on this journey for me, because I wanted to prove to myself that as an Asian Muslim girl, I can do this. So years went on, and in COVID, as everybody, my mental health, as everybody else's, was severely affected. And I still remember When people say to me they get anxiety or they're depressed, I never used to understand what that meant. But in COVID, my mental health was severely affected because you were locked up at home, couldn't go out. And I just remember crying at one occasion for days and days and days. And I thought to myself, why is it I'm so upset? And I spoke to my mom and she said to me, it's because you've not been to the gym, Z. And I went, oh my God, yes, it's because I couldn't attend an activity in the gym. That was why I was so emotional all the time. And that's when I decided to go onto Google and look for a challenge. I thought when COVID uplifts and we can come out, I can do something for myself. So I decided to sign up for a challenge on climbing Kilimanjaro, which is the freestanding mountain in the world. But I just thought to myself, that's just a hike. I need something bigger. So the organisers had mentioned that there was a Guinness World Record attached to this. So on the crater of 6,000 metres of this mountain, there was an obstacle course that was going to be set up. And you have to have 5 minimum obstacles to achieve a Guinness World Record. I thought, okay, now that sounds like a challenge. Now, bearing in mind, it was still semi-COVID. So it was still very difficult to train. So I had to train at home. I had to get this altitude massage. So you must have seen these athletes use like the blue mask, which is the oxygen saturation levels. I had to hire that out. I had weights at home. I had to buy some weights at home. I had a punching bag in my backyard and I started training. And slowly, when it sort of COVID uplifted, I started going out to the gym a little bit as well. So I started training and it was 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. It weren't just strength and cardio, it was endurance, but mental strength is what I had to discover to be able to train this hard, but also the nutrition, water intake, and the most important, sleep and recovery. So juggling all this whilst having a full-time job, as well as trying to set up an organization was very difficult, but I managed to do it. And I flew out to Africa whilst it was still in the red country. So that was a bit scary and very difficult. But I flew out to Africa. There was 29 athletes from around the world, from 16 different countries. And we actually went to Africa. And these are professional athletes. And bearing in mind, I'm just a boxer from Blackburn. So it was like, yeah, I felt a bit intimidated at times with all these other athletes around. But we went to Africa and we started climbing. The climb initially for the first week was sort of easy. 7-8 hours a day you would climb. You'd go to a certain altitude and then you'd rest in campsite and then you'd carry on the next day. Because of the mountain being so high at 6,000 meters, you can't just climb it all in one go. It has to be done in stages because your body needs to recover and rest at the same time. And I still remember the day was a summit night. So the summit night means when you reach the top of Kilimanjaro. We were walking up at 1 o'clock and I still remember there was no breakfast. I don't drink tea or coffee because I'm a health freak. So that was difficult. So I was on an empty stomach and I started climbing. And I remember the sun rising up and I just thought, wow, this is amazing. But what I realized is that my body wasn't hacking it and I got altitude sickness. And what that means is that you'll be sick. So I was sick the first time. My guide, Martin, he said to me, Z, give me your backpack. You're not well. I said, no, I'm going to be strong and I'm going to do this and I'm going to carry my own backpack. These are very stubborn at times. So I carried on climbing. And then unfortunately, I got altitude sickness again. And when I got altitude sickness again is when I was hallucinating. So I did not remember what day it was, what was happening to me, where I was. And all I remember saying is, I want to get off this mountain and I do not want to do this anymore. And I remember my guide, Martin, had said to me that, Z, no matter what, I'm going to take you to that crater. And he pushed me through. And thank God to him, because I would have achieved anything without his support. We got to the top of Kilimanjaro. I touched the summit, absolutely happy. And he took me to the crater. We were the first human beings on the planet to get onto the crater of this mountain. I remember looking at all the athletes getting ready to do this Guinness World Record. And I thought to myself, I can't do it. And I just sat on the side having some banana soup and thinking, I can't do this. But then I thought to myself, what is the worst case that's going to happen to me right now? I'm going to die. I'd rather die with the Guinness World Record. So I sprung up and I did the challenge. And there was 2 Guinness World Records. It was a world highest fitness class and the world highest obstacle course. So I became the only British Muslim in the UK to achieve both these challenges. And it was an incredible experience. And when I finished and came back to the UK, that's when the whole community took me seriously. And it's really sad, because prior to that, when I tried to engage with the community, with the work that I was doing, I wasn't getting a lot of respect, especially from the sort of male leaders in the community. But it took something so big for me to achieve, for them to believe in me. Now we're in the 7th year of our charity. We have 10 different projects running, from education, mental health, physical exercise, indoor activities, access to green and blue spaces. We do hiking, we do international treks. We've got a variety of different services from the age of 10 years old to the senior. And it's a mixture of things, just to allow people to understand the importance of talking about mental health, but also understanding that as a woman or as a man, you are capable of achieving anything that you wish to do. You know, never degrade yourself. If you have an ambition, you have a dream, you can achieve that, but you've got to have the self-belief and the consistency within that. Because if you don't have those values within yourself, then you're never going to achieve. And that's one thing I've realized. Now, I'm not one of those people, when it comes to mental health, to sit in front of somebody on a chair face to face and talk about my issues. However, what I do is I go for a walk, or I hike up a mountain with a friend, and I talk side by side whilst climbing that mountain, and talk about issues that I have, or stresses, or whatever I'm feeling at the time, to release this negative energy. And that works for me. I recommend every single one of you on this call today to find something that you resonate with, whether it's creative arts, whether it is counseling or therapy. Creative arts is another one that's come out, which is a really powerful thing to do as well. Or if it's somebody like me who actually engages in physical activity to release negative energy, because talking about mental health is very important, and taking action is very important too. So thank you so much for your time. I will pass it over back to Zainul. If there's any questions, I will be happy to answer at the end of this, after the second speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Z. Incredible what you have done. I mean, obviously, no one would want to end up fighting with you and being in karate and boxing. And I admire your grueling activities climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, which ironically is the country I come from originally. I know other family members of mine have recently climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, so you've probably got something there in common. But just before I sort of hand over to our next speaker, Z, can you tell me, you talked about the challenges of being from a single parent family. What has that had on you, the impact that has had on you personally?
So I think it's the belief of not having a male figure to look up to. But you know, I do believe in God, and I do believe that He sends people into your life to show you that way. But being younger, up until the age of, I'd say, 25, I didn't really have a male figure. So for me, mentally, that was torture, because, you know, the simple things, changing a light bulb, you know, moving things from your car, or sorting your car out, or anything, you know, wanted a £10 for a bit of petty cash. I didn't have that, unfortunately. But my mother, who is my role model, has taken on both roles. But I guess they're very different when it comes from a feminine energy compared to a masculine energy. But I do believe that having the courage and faith, because throughout, you know, when I hit around about 25 onwards until now, God has placed people into my life for a reason, like you, Zainul. You know, I'll really look up to you too. So He's placed people into my life to give me that education that I didn't have, unfortunately, when I was younger. And I was very rebellious. I had a lot of anger issues because I didn't know how to release this negative energy. I didn't know how to control this emotion. And back then, when I was younger, there was no such thing as mental health. There was barely any services that were providing that you could talk about mental health or the situation. So for me, it was just about carrying on with this emotion until I got a bit older, and I realized it's when I started really the hiking, and I started meeting different people, when people were talking about mental health. And that's when I started realizing, oh, okay, maybe I should start talking. And it's took a long time for me to talk about, even having a conversation right now about this. It's only the last 3 years that I've been confident to speak about my sort of past emotions, because I've dealt with that trauma and them emotions. And that's something that I would say back to everybody. that, you know, deal with the traumas, deal with the emotions, because it will catch up with you. And if you don't, you know, if you've got a friend or a family member or somebody in the organization or the community, find somebody that you can relate to. And because there will be people out there that you can connect with, that you can truly be yourself and be open and honest about how you're feeling, because that's the only way you're going to get a resolution.
Z, I might have to stop you there. But have great admiration for what you've had to go through. I'm sure some of the ladies on this talk might take a few tips from you on home DIY and things like that. But may I say thank you again
Thank you.
for a very moving story of your life to date. And I'm sure some of our guests here or may even want to join your karate classes or boxing classes that you
I
have,
want
or
to
even,
join.
well, you see, you got a few recruits here. Anyhow,
I
I
want to
shall
join.
move swiftly on to our next speaker, who's Dr. Rahula Haji. I met Dr. Rahula, oh gosh, almost 3 years ago when he came to the UK, fleeing the war in Ukraine, and his background is absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure he will share some of that with you. But over to you, Dr. Rahula.
Yeah, hello
Wah!
everyone. And salam alaikum and good evening, and I hope everyone is okay. And I hope everyone feels fine, far from mental health issues. My name is Rohullah, and I was born in Afghanistan, Kabul, Afghanistan. And in my teens, I went to Ukraine to my elderly brother who was there from long time because of the war. And there I studied my medical school, and post diploma I did 4 different specialty and started to work as a heart surgeon. And of course, I come to that part because one of the biggest issue mentally which affects people, it is war crisis, mental crisis. Uh, it's not just one reason behind the mental health. I'll come back to that if it is okay. In Ukraine, I started to build my personality, my life, my future. Uh, there's a sentence called ups and downs in the life. It's not something coming like daily, uh, daily based phrase. I felt that because I came from war, I built uh, my life. After the education, I started to build up few different organizations like NGOs to help other refugees, and I set up a medical clinic, and work as a lecturer in medical school, and worked as an activist
Jewish
in the
blood.
community. Yeah, everything was not in one blink. It took for 15 years, and then I became a resident of Ukraine. And twice they accepted me, or they nominated me as a best or activist, the most activist young in NHSUR project UN. Uh, Out of blue, one day, it was 24th or 27th of February 2022, war
Same.
started. And I was in a medical trip with other surgeons. And I was very far from my family. And war started, and my family and all my friends, they fled the Ukraine to Europe. And I was alone. And my family went to Romania. I went to Poland. Why I spoke about myself, Ukraine, Afghanistan, and Ukraine, all the other organization and education and university, because my life was in a very high level, because I did different congress around the world. I went as a speaker. Just one moment, I lost everything, even my family. I thought that moment, that's at the end of the life. Yes. But I started to follow up my dream. I went to Poland, and then from Poland, I went to Hungary. From Hungary, sorry, to Romania. I joined my family in Romania, thanks God. Then we came to Hungary, then Germany. On this, then it was, I mean, Austria, then Germany, in 2 days, by train, by car, by different way. And then I flew to UK because I had UK visa. I came before and visited visa, by visa, and we came to UK. Just let you know, as a no one, as a no one, no doctor, no lecturer, nothing. You're just like you came from Afghanistan in my teens, but with some paper, diploma, without English, because I studied everything Russian. And they locate us in one of the hotels, which calls immigrant hotels or refugee hotels. It's everyone going there, and they do the protest. You must close. In that hotels, there are a lot of professionals. Believe me, doctors, lawyers, accountants, a lot of very, very special people. They didn't want to leave their family and their friend and their homeland and their business and the home that they made it by themselves, the home where they raised up with their parents. Memories are there. No one want to come here and just try to take other places, other professions. No, believe me, 99.9% people are here because of saving their life. From there, I was with my kids and my wife in one room for 1 year. They paid for £8 for each week. And what's you to do? No connections, no family and friends, and in Blackpool on the beach. And there was no one to speak with. What's you to do? What you to do? I started to go gym, and it was a bit far. I run till gym every day and coming back running to just just change my mood. And as they said already, we should think differently. Otherwise, depression, anxiety will take you and not will let you go forward. Anyway, I found an organization here in Manchester. Then they swapped me from that hotel to this hotel, to the Manchester hotel. Then I met Zainul. Connection is the key, and kind people always around us. As Zainul, as they said, Allah and God will meet you with people who are helping you and supporting you. We should detect it and we should go for it. Zainul helped me a lot, and I can't forget ever those days that I left my very luxury life, and they not let me to be connected with other people. We went to some donation parties or dinners, and then one by one, I started to go back. I passed my exams, my English exam, and started to find job in NHS and do other exams. And I found they gave me a house near the hospital, South Royal Hospital. I found Afghan community. I saw there's a community with culture center, a very good mosque. I met them. I started to uh, I started to work with that community. I gave them the idea to start an education center. We started education center. I tried to help people with mental health issue, counseling them, and now we have got more than 70 students coming from different communities, and more than 6 teachers. They study with us, and yeah, and I work. Today I had 3 hours lecture in South Royal Hospital for doctors as a lecturer, coming back, ups and downs. Afghanistan down, Ukraine up, then war down, then back. I'm going forward up. As a lecturer today, I started to teach 3 sessions for 3 hours. Doctors in South Royal hospitals. Hospital. As a mentor, people coming to the mosque, to the education center. As a doctor, I haven't got my GMC registration yet, but I work in different GPs helping doctors in the system. And in Ukraine, I hadn't got any kids. Now I have 3 kids. You know, after every fall, there is another step you can raise up. Believe me. It is about my journey. I'm trying to tell you what about the mental health in UK. Unfortunately, mental health is an issue for NHS and for UK government. It's about 1 in 4 adults experiencing now a mental health problem each year in the UK. Can you imagine? 1 in 4, being 25%. It's a very, very big issue. And it's not just about men and female. It's about all ages, and especially in youth. It raised from 12 to 23% now in 2023. Then, what is the cause? The cause is here, not worldwide. First of all, we can speak about living crisis. Yeah, loneliness. I mentioned several times, I had my mom with me. I had my sister supported. There are about 7 or 6% of population, they are lonely. They don't have anyone. They don't have to speak with anyone. There is no family. The other thing is the experiencing the social media. Nowadays, war in Gaza, war in Ukraine, it affects. And there are a lot of other issues. How to prevent this? We have different C's. We remember about 5 C's, or we can speak about other C's. What does it mean, C's? First C, I can speak about the connection. We should have good connection. The second one, compassion. We should be very kind. And we try to do something in kindness. It will help us. The third C, it's community. We should be part of the community. You won't feel lonely. The fourth one is confidence. We should be always positive, full self-regard, and believe in one's ability that we can do that. We can do that. Next C is care. We should care about our physical, emotional, and mental health. Next C is character. A commitment to morality and integrity. Consistency, another C. Clarity, another C. Gaining a clear understanding of your thoughts and feelings. Yeah. I hope that life one day will be free of mental health issue, which is not easy. But don't forget, mental health issue is natural if it is temporary. If it's for a long period, then you can go and seek help. and seek help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rola. That's brilliant. I mean, you're a very modest gentleman. Many of you may not know, but he speaks, I think, 8 languages, I believe. Um, and so he can cover all bases. I'm not sure, but since I met you, what, nearly 3 years back, your description of your journey from Ukraine to UK has been pretty tough, and I know not that I will spend time here to talk about it, but you had some really tough periods when you were in Manchester at the very beginning, where you were moved from one place to another and then told to move out and whatever it is. But I'm glad to hear that you've got 3 Mancunian children now, and hopefully they'll be supporting the right football team. Um, Anyhow, I think there were some questions during the early parts of your talk, Rola, one of which was when moving from Ukraine to the UK, were there any sort of prejudice or discrimination that you've experienced?
Yep, yep. Yeah. Uh, if to be honest, this life, uh, living in this life, there isn't free time that you won't face racist people, unfortunately. We should be very realistic. Everywhere, in every level, you'll find people. The thing is, if mentally you are weak, it will affect you in your mental health period that you have got this issue more and more. I mean, worsen the situation, unfortunately. But when I was going out and I was stuck in Poland, in Polish border, it was mid-winter. It was very, very, I mean, cold, and no one paid attention. We didn't have anything to go forward, and they didn't pay attention. They didn't let us to to get some cars, and we were stacking there, and no one paid attention. Why? Because we didn't look like them. Then I made uh, a very argue with them. I went, explained we are the same people, like Ukrainian. I am one of these refugees came out from the war. Yeah, that was the question. But the other question was about war, I think. Yeah, how I felt in the war. All this racism, anxiety, depression, uh, not supportive system. If we compare with the war, it's nothing. Believe me. Why? Because you don't know what is going on in 2 minutes. Maybe you will lose your life. You lose the loved one that you live with now. I remember very good. Remember, we were uh, underground, and I was a child in my mom's lab when the rockets come, and it was very near to our house. Everything came on us, dust and everything. Uh, and that was the moment that I felt life gone. There's no one to help you. The second thing, PTSD. For a long time, when there was a signal, car signal, I was jumping. I didn't know what's that. I thought it's rocket. Nightmares, poverty. War is equal poverty. You don't know what to eat. Here, when someone they have problem, compared to that, it is easy. I can't say it's nothing. It's easy to bear with because at least there is some place to live. There is something to eat. There is something to wear. That
Rola,
is,
your
yeah.
the words are very, very powerful and moving and very relevant in current times. But I'm conscious of the time, and we've got a few more uh, questions, one
Yeah.
of which someone said, what languages do you speak?
Oh, the languages, you know, sometimes life led you to study or learn languages. There are Afghans who came to UK. Most of them they speak several languages. I in Afghanistan there are two languages, Pashto and Dari. I studied there for 12 years. I studied both. I mean in my school, it's Pashto and Dari. Then I started to study English there, a bit in very primitive level. Came to Ukraine and studied Russian and Ukrainian. I studied my medical education in Russian. And if you don't know Ukrainian, it's not easy to work. It's not allowed to get, I mean, passport. It became how many? Pashto, Dari, Pashto, English, Russian, Ukrainian, five. I studied in German language school there. I studied German for 5 years. It became six. Arabic language I studied in Ukraine with the Arabs because I loved Arabic. As a Muslim, you should know Arabic. If you don't know Arabic, you cannot understand Quran. And if you don't know Quran, it will be difficult to know everything about your religion. It was seven, and the eighth one is Urdu or Hindi. Yeah, we are very near to our culture, Afghan culture, with Pakistan and in India, especially through Bollywood films. We watched when I was young. We watched a lot of Bollywood films. That's why I learned Urdu from that. It became eight. I hope I can go forward and learn something else.
Well, Rahul, I'm sure you might be able to do us a Bollywood dance at some point, but I'm conscious of the time. Got another question here very quickly, if you can, from Medina, saying, how do you make sure that mental health awareness training actually protects people from harmful behavior by colleagues or authority figures?
Yeah, this question is okay. Let me see. How do you make sure that mental health awareness training actually protects people from harmful behavior? Uh, if there is some problem uh, in where you live, study or work from by colleagues, if there is some problem, you should know the technique. What is the issue? Maybe it's not the issue. Maybe it's your problem generally, because sometimes we start in some place or some department and we don't know the policies. As I start work in NHS, there are some policies that didn't match with Ukraine. If I didn't know, it was a big issue for me first days. Then they give me some mentor and explain to me how to deal with this issue. Yeah, it is the same. You should know how to behave in different situation, because every culture, every community, every company, every business has their own policies. You should know the policies. You should know how to behave what. And if there is exactly if there is an issue and you see it is a problem, you can escalate it. You can speak with that person first of all. You can confront it in good way and then share your feeling. Maybe you change everything. If no, then go for it.
Rahul, sorry to interject. I'm just conscious of time, and I'm sure this is a topic that could carry on discussing, or maybe we can pick it up at the end
Yeah.
again,
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
But again, can I say thank you very much, Rahul, for a very in-depth and informed picture of your life, which amazes me, and where you managed to re-establish yourself back here in Manchester. Anyway, without ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Shazad Amin, who, as I said before, is a psychiatrist of many years training and practicing. But I'll hand over directly to Shazad now.
Thank you very much, Zainul, and good evening and salam, everyone. So, on Mental Health Day, there are lots of things to talk about. We had some really interesting stories from our previous two speakers. I won't go off on a tangent and can discuss aspects of their case. Stick to what I was going to talk about. What I want to talk about today is one of the big issues in mental health is that of stigma and difficulty in talking about these kinds of problems. And I'll illustrate that by a couple of case studies. And I want to talk about particularly the difficulties that men have talking about mental health, because in my long career as a psychiatrist, I have seen, and many other people have seen, a big difference in basically the genders in terms of ability to talk about personal emotions, feelings, because often women are much more expressive and emotional, can talk about these things, and men aren't. So I'll kick off with a couple of case studies. So the first case a few years ago, I saw a 25-year-old Pakistani man who'd had depression about 6-7 years ago. And one of the first things I asked him, well, why haven't you sought help earlier, really? And he said, I have. And he basically had gone to various faith healers for years and years, getting kind of traditional kind of treatments or we call kind of on a religious basis for this, really. And he had spent thousands of pounds. Now, this was a man who was actually quite a highly educated professional man with a degree, really. But essentially, when he described what he'd been doing, as it were, I was quite shocked. And the fact is that he'd basically been scammed of several £1,000s with actually treatments with no evidence base whatsoever. And one of the difficulties he talked about was actually going to mainstream services and admitting his problems to his GP, to a counselor, to a psychiatrist. And he wanted to keep it hidden. And he'd go off and see this faith healer in a different city, and no one would know about it, really. So that's one example. Another example is a man I saw as a junior doctor. I never forget this case. He was a 60-year-old man who was a Welsh miner. And those of you who know anything about kind of Welsh, the mining communities in this country, not many of them left now, know the kind of traditional people I'm talking about. Now, this man had been admitted after an overdose of medication, and he was in hospital waiting to be assessed by someone like myself before we could decide he was safe to go home, i.e. did he have a mental illness, would he do it again, etc., etc. Now, he had lots of stresses. He had lots of physical health problems. He had arthritis, was on lots of medication, was in chronic pain. He was in a wheelchair. He lived alone. I think he was drinking quite a bit as well. So lots of problems, lots of reasons why this man would be depressed. But I recall when I saw him, he was basically denying absolutely everything. He was trying to play everything down. Oh, I didn't really mean to take the overdose. It wasn't significant. I won't do it again. I'm absolutely fine. Thank you very much. But it just didn't add up. Why would a man like this take quite a big overdose? And I wasn't happy at all with some of his answers, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So I thought, let's try and take a different tack. And I said to him, really, let me ask you a question, sir. Look, if you were in your wheelchair going down the street and you hit a curb or something and you fell over, would you ask somebody for help? And he looked at me and said, not really, no, I try and get myself, kind of thing. So that told me the kind of psychology of this man. He didn't like asking for help at all. And then I tried to explain to him because I suspected highly that he had a depressive illness, he had depression. And I tried to explain this to him. And I did that by use of an analogy. Now, we all know that we find it much more easy to talk about physical health problems than we do mental health problems. So I said to him, look, if you had a heart attack and, and you got all these symptoms of chest pain and breathlessness, all these things, would you seek help for that? I said, of course I would. I said, would you take medication for it? Would you see a specialist? Yes, 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 all those questions. I said, look, it's quite simple. The brain is just another organ, like any other part of the body. When we are under too much stress, it has a breakdown. Just like the heart has a breakdown when it's under too much stress, we call that a heart attack. The brain can break down, we call it depression. And for depression, we do have different types of treatments, not just medication, therapy, counseling, lifestyle changes, all those kind of things, it were. And it was only after I did that he kind of resonating with him. That yes, maybe it's something. I told him, it's very difficult for you to talk about. I understand that being a miner and coming from a mining community, men have particularly difficult talking about these problems. But as soon as I said that to him, it opened up. And this man was very, very severely depressed. He was actually quite seriously suicidal, and he needed admitting to hospital. Yeah, and I remember that case because initially he said, I'm absolutely fine, and he absolutely wasn't fine at all. And that then takes me into a more general thing of what I want to talk about today is why is it that we generally find it difficult to talk about mental illness? And why do men particularly have this problem? So in terms of more general, first of all, we know that stigma is a big problem in our society talking about mental illness. Yes. You know, if you're on a bus or a train, you will hear people very easily talking about their asthma or their arthritis and things like that. It's relatively rare to hear people talking about their psychosis and the medication they're taking for it, or depression and things like that. Now, there are still lots of stereotypical ideas about mental illness. So, for example, people think that, you know, if you admit to having mental health problems or mental illness, it's a sign of weakness in some way. It is something wrong with you, and something to be ashamed of, something you should try and hide rather than talk about, and you keep it to yourself. And lots of people do that. They just try and cope by keeping them to themselves. But the problem with that is if you just bottle it up inside you, essentially, it's like a pressure cooker. And the pressure builds up, and eventually something has to give. And that's why sometimes people will hold these things in, suddenly have a breakdown, and develop some serious mental illness at some point, really. But why do men particularly have this problem? So you can see what I've talked about already, that men traditionally have more difficulty because of gender roles. I know obviously things are changing in the society, but men still have the idea that they should be stronger mentally. And they are the breadwinners, the protectors, the people go out, you know, the classic A-type personality, the macho culture. You know, men don't talk about these things because if you do, you're not a real man, are you really? Yeah. And so all of those things are a feature. Men also seem to have less spaces to talk about these things. Yeah, when they're in groups of people, you talk about other things. You talk about the football or basically films or whatever it is. You don't talk about your mental health, certainly to other men, whereas women often will talk about these things in women's circles. So there's again a gender difference there. Another problem, another issue is that men tend to internalize things and women tend to externalize. So if you internalize things, basically men start having symptoms of anger control and things like that, and they sometimes start using drugs or alcohol much more so than women to try and cope with those symptoms. But of course, if we know anything about these kinds of substances, they may offer very short-term relief in terms of helping you sleep or basically knocking you out so you forget about your problems temporarily, but those problems are going to be there the next day. And certainly alcohol is an extremely powerful drug, and when taken over a period of time, makes depression much, much worse. So rather than solve your problems, people are turning to substances which make them worse, really. Yeah. So one of the things that we all should think about when we see someone struggling, I'm not just talking about men here, obviously, I'm giving that as an example because they are harder to reach really, is what can we do to help such people who you may see are struggling and you're not sure how to approach it really. So it's important that we are all able to help our friends and family members talk about these things. Yeah. So it's important, first of all, to approach someone on a private setting, in a private manner, and say, look, I've noticed X, Y, and Z. Are things okay? You know, it's difficult to talk about sometimes if you're under stress or struggling. And we know there's so many pressures that we're all under today, whether it's money problems, housing, benefits, you can't get a appointment with your GP, and you've got children struggling at school. It could be hundred different reasons, really. And we start that conversation. It's also important that we have that conversation, and we use what's called a non-judgmental attitude. it's very important that we don't judge people, and we allow them the space to say things and, you know, disclose things which obviously are very difficult to talk about without saying anything, essentially, in terms of, you know, being critical or making a value judgment, you know. And that's extremely important as well, because if we do that, they may sort of clam up, might not come to you again, and they might find it more difficult to talk to anyone else about that, if because obviously you might be the first person they've discussed it with. And if you basically act in a certain way, that might stop them from talking to anyone else about the similar kinds of problems, really. So that's really important, having a private, non-judgmental space in which to talk to people about. Now, many people are also worried about talking to people and going to see a doctor and getting referred because they don't want to be labeled as having a mental illness or mad or something like that. And some people don't want to go because they don't want to get onto antidepressant or other medication because they're worried that it will become addicted and things like that. Now, of course, those concerns are there, and they've been there for many, many years. But I can certainly say that many patients have such concerns. But when they're able to talk about things to a professional, certainly, a lot of these things can be dispelled. I've lost count of the number of times people came to see me and, you know, and said they were really worried that I was going to label them with some severe mental illness and admit them to hospital and throw away the key, essentially. Yes, and they would never be able to go home, or section them and things like that. So there's a lot of misconception still out there which can be dispelled. The other thing, considering the time is short, really, I want to just also say is address this idea of people being worried about medication. Now, it's true that some people need medication, but actually a lot of current life mental health problems, depression, stress, as it were, you know, can be solved without medication, actually. Yeah. And I think previous speakers alluded to it a bit earlier, really, because, you know, life is stressful. So simple things nowadays aren't done properly at all. So, for example, the number one thing I think which would improve people's mental health overnight would be people respecting the need for the body to sleep. And we live in a 24-hour kind of society now, and I'm afraid smartphones and initially the internet, and now smartphones, you know, have completely, basically, almost, you know, ruined the demarcation between people's sleep and waking lives, really. Yeah. So we can be on our smartphones till the early hours of the morning, kind of thing. We have to get up for work the next day, or school, or university, whatever. So that's the first thing. People need to give respect to sleep, because sleep's really, really important on all sorts of levels. Next thing is diet. People just don't eat the right things, and literally, you know, if you're eating stuff that's processed and you eat all you eat, you're literally ingesting chemicals. It's ironic, actually. People say to me, I don't want antidepressants, I don't want chemicals in my body. I mean, you look at what they're eating, smoking and drinking, all that kind of thing. They're doing it anyway, really. Yes. And the third thing is, back to our first speaker, exercise is so important. Now, look, most of us aren't going to be able to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Let's be honest about that, really. Yeah? But most of us can go for a daily walk, or, you know, do something relatively simple, really. Yes. And the final thing I'll talk about, I've already talked about it slightly in terms of mobile phones, is actually the role of social media. I am very firmly of the view that uh, mobile phones should be banned for under 16s. Absolutely. I think they did that in Australia recently. That will be one of the best things to do, for certainly for young people. But being on social media itself is causing itself so many problems. Yeah, a lot of social media is actually quite depressing and toxic and anxiety provoking. And actually, people just on there, what we call doom scrolling, you know, for hours on end and commenting and all the rest of it, really, without any real benefit, it has to be said. And this is now itself becoming a bit of a problem. So yeah, I think that's nearly my time up. I just wanted to highlight those few points, and so I will hand back now to Zainul.
Shazad, that's very insightful and helpful, and I'm sure for those on here, you focus on what men are, and as you quite clearly say, men are very reluctant to talk about this. I would also care to mention here that there are groups or self-help groups for men, one of which is called Andy's Man Club, which is a charity where men only meet up once a week, I believe, on a Monday evening. So look them up. You may find one in your area, or tell your friends who might care to want to go to one of those places. But I think a lot of your thoughts and advice really are very, very helpful, and hopefully taken by those on this webinar. I will now sort of open up to any questions. There are questions which I will invite any of the audience who are still here. Coulson, I don't know whether you're here still. If you want to just speak out what you've put in the chat.
I can read it out.
Okay, right.
So the question, or to whoever really, when people have serious mental health issues like bipolar or schizophrenia, they hide away because the community doesn't understand or is unsupportive. How can we make this more acceptable and remove the stigma to allow people with these long-term conditions to live normally?
Yeah, look, you can't remove stigma overnight and very simply, as it were, yeah. And there are always going to be some people have negative views. But generally speaking, there is a lot more available now. I mean, some of the groups Zainul mentioned, other groups like Mind and a lot of charities now have local branches people can go to and share that safe space, because there you will see people, counselors and other people like yourself, actually, who do understand. And a lot of the big charities also specialize in illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar. And then, of course, you have the NHS. I mean, GP can refer you to see a counselor, psychologist, or a psychiatrist, where, of course, those kind of people will understand what you're going through, as it were. But yeah, public education of mental health, it is improving, but only very slowly. And that's a difficult process. There have been lots of public health, mental health campaigns over the last 10, 15 years. Some of them have been okay, some of them kind of better than others kind of thing. But yeah, it's a slow process, to be honest with you.
No, Fazal, I very much agree with you. Education, and I can share from my own experience when I was involved in setting up or helping to set up a mental health charity in York many years ago, which were dealing with young people recovering from schizophrenia, and the prejudice and ignorance that was out there, was incredible. But I remember very vividly when we were moving into a new purpose-built workshop that the locals were objecting to, and approached the council at the time to say no, they didn't want such a thing. But by bringing them and getting them to meet the folks, it dispelled a lot of those myths. All right. I'm just echoing what has already been said by Dr. Shazad, really, that if you need someone to talk to, there are many organizations out there, and I've only given here a few that are notably, well known: Mind, Samaritans, Shout, Calm, Rethink, and Young Minds, obviously. And then there's obviously the NHS that provide. Could you just go a bit lower down, scroll a bit further down, please? Yeah. So obviously the NHS have services, but equally, seeing your own GP as well for any help you might need. So, I can share all of this with everyone if you don't have it post today. And what I'd like to next, if you move to the next slide, please. I'd like to say really a big thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. Event like this, whilst it's a bit of an uncharted territory for me, is only made up by you and equally by our speakers. And I'd like to thank them all, that's Z and Dr. Ola and Dr. Shazad, for very kindly contributing their time and giving up their time to share their stories and insights. I say, unfortunately, Emily for health reasons, wasn't able to appear, and I had technical difficulties, so weren't able to play her music, but I shall certainly send out a link. For those of you who don't know, this whole event has been organized under the name of Manchester Gymkhana, which Dr. Rahulu and myself founded a few years ago. It has been a bit dormant in the past couple of years for a variety of reasons, but we hope to start renewing our activities in the coming months, hopefully. And lastly but not least, can we just go on to the last slide, please? I'd like to also say to all of those who may have been wearing yellow, they say we're trying to fundraise for Young Minds, and as part of this annual campaign called Hello Yellow, to raise money for young people that they're supporting, I would kindly ask you if you're willing to donate. If you can scroll down a bit more, please. Donate either, you can scan that. If you go a bit further down, and you've probably seen that on the invite as well, there is a link to the donation page on Young Minds. Anything you can give, we very kindly appreciate it. Well, if there is nothing else, I will just say a big thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. And if you have any questions or further questions you want to ask on this topic, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me, but I will share some of the material on here with you. Okay, well, I wish you all a good evening, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Life is never easy. Life is like a game. I was never good at playing, at staying sane. But I don't care. I'm not scared anymore, 'cause I've been there. I've been pinned against the wall, so I was hoping you